Now, US-based consultancy group Palladium has set up a subsidiary in Kenya to boost its programs that seek sustainable strategies that impact society positively. Now, they already manage 19 international development projects worth about $128 million. And the group recently launched its strategic execution consulting business unit that is expected to widen the offering to include a balanced scorecard implementation. Well, let's get some more insight into all this. Joining me in the studio is Richard Lee Nash. He's Palladium's group's country manager. Welcome to the studio, Richard.
Thank you, Ocha.
Now, of course, looking at what exactly your company does, you government, private sector, aid agencies, they've all approached you to help implement strategies in various sectors across board. Give us some insight into this winning strategy that is attracting all these sectors.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll explain a little bit about what we do. So we
Right.
came from, in the 90s, Dr. Robert Kaplan and David Norton had a look and they realized that people had great strategies, but they weren't really seeing the results they wanted from them. And they dived in and they did a lot of research and they realized that people never really had a strong framework to help them achieve those strategies. So they basically came out of that developing the Balanced Scorecard, which since then has developed into the execution premium process. And what this does is it takes a strategy, it makes it a lot easier to communicate so that you can get everyone in your staff or your stakeholders to understand what you're trying to achieve, what they need to do. And really that helps drive the results, because when you can mobilize your stakeholders to get what you want to do because they know what it is, you really start seeing results. And I think within the Kenyan context, we're not new to the country. We've been here for 15 years, helping with various projects, healthcare, education, etc. And now coming in, what we're saying is we've got these particular projects, but can we take those and develop an overarching strategy, either for a company or for the country,
Right.
and start implementing those to see real results? And that's been something that's been quite interesting for the...
Well, for example, you're working with government's private sector in the agricultural sector.
Yes.
Give us some insight into what your strategy or what the strategy is in a sector like agriculture across the continent. Give us a closer look at what exactly is this winning strategy.
So there's many things that we could do, and I'll give you an example. It's something we've done in the region where it's as a company, we're focused on how do we create positive value, okay? And one of the things we've done here is we've looked at the agriculture sector and said, there's a problem in the maize value chain.
Right.
And there we've looked and said that, there was a company in Uganda that was importing maize. This is a country that should be very good at growing their own maize. And it was stuck in the wrong sort of cycle. So we worked with a variety of different stakeholders there to say, how do we develop the right policies, bring together the right stakeholders to have a good ecosystem? So we went down to looking at the farmers saying, is the land big enough? Do you know what you're doing? Do you have the right skills? Do you have the right irrigation? Up from the value chain, do you have the right logistics, processing facilities? And do you have then the right offtake agreements? Are the customers able to take that? Right. And this is much more of, you're designing the full strategy, but also bringing together multiple different stakeholders.
Right.
So this is not government trying to fix something. This is private sector saying, I've got something to gain, because if I can help here, I make more money. It's the farmers saying, if I got more skills, I can actually make more money.
Right.
And that sustainable thing is something that's very appealing both
Right.
to society and the businesses.
Well, on that note, how would you say your strategy differs from strategies that have been implemented before here in Africa?
So it's all about the different business units we have. So I work for the strategy execution consulting unit. So
Right.
we help design strategies and mobilize the various stakeholders. So make sure everyone understands what they're doing. We then have our technical programs management unit. So they've traditionally, especially in Kenya, been working for the aid organization. So how do you help deliver strong initiatives that help get the results? And then we've got a third unit that does the impact investing. And obviously we have the relationships with the aid organizations, which then put us in the position to be able to help finance some of those initiatives identified. So
Right.
big strategy, very clearly aligned on what that organization entity wants to achieve. Financing that we're able to bring in either through coalitions for the private sector, the government, or through aid organizations, impact investing, and the on-the-ground team that's able to deliver the results.
Now, you recently set up a subsidiary here in Kenya. Give us some insight into what exactly you plan to do here, and certainly what are your plans in terms of expanding this idea across the rest of Africa?
So, you know, as globally, strategy execution is a tremendous problem. So it's a problem for various different sectors. It's a problem for government, private sector, NGO, etc. So what we're trying to do here is work with private sector. So how do you make sure that you're able to achieve your strategy to be a lot more profitable, but also trying to do bigger things within the government? So how do you really align the government? How do you build coalitions, private sector and public sector, to bring people together? So the idea is that private sector, global best practice, let's drive profits. But within that, how do you develop a sustainable strategy? Like I mentioned earlier, positive impact company. How do you go from having a business strategy and a CSR strategy to having a sustainable business strategy? Then bigger ecosystem, how do you work with government? How does government work with you to really see results?
Well, we'll certainly be watching what you're doing here in Kenya. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. Richard Lee, of course, country manager for Palladium Group.